Welcome to the Connected Spirit Podcast, a space where the mystical and the human experience merge, where we explore what it really means to walk a spirit-led path. I'm Courtney Dawson, an ethical medium and mentor, and for as long as I can remember, I have felt the presence of the spirit world. But my journey hasn't been simple. It's been one of self-discovery, healing from religious and emotional trauma, navigating fear, judgment, and the loneliness that comes with embracing something the world doesn't always understand. This podcast is here to take what was once considered woo and bring it into the real lived experience of being human. Because mediumship isn't just something we do, it's who we are. Here we dive into the conversations no one else is having, breaking down misconceptions, exploring the unseen, and normalizing the journey of deep connection. We'll talk about the beauty and the struggle of being a medium. We'll laugh, we'll reflect, we'll go deep. And most importantly, we'll remember who we are, why we're here, and how spirit moves through us all. So if you've ever felt something more, if you've ever questioned the unseen, or if you're simply ready to embrace the fullness of your spiritual path, you're in the right place. Welcome back to the Connected Spirit Podcast. I am so honored to be joined today by filmmaker Robert Lyon and internationally respected evidential mediums, ministers, and tutors, Dykes and Kerry McLeod, the team behind the documentary Evidence of the Afterlife. Today, we're going to be exploring the purpose behind this film, the importance of evidential mediumship, and the very human journey of serving spirit while also navigating personal grief. Welcome to the show, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, Robert, I want to talk to you first. What first drew you to Phil and Kerry's story, and when did you know that this needed to become a documentary?
It's a kind of a long story, but the gist of it is I was a camera photojournalist in news business, and I transitioned into car racing. And while I was filming car racing for motorsport teams, I met Sandra Champlain, and she's the author of the book We Don't Die. And some of you might have heard of her. But I approached her one day, and because she had a catering tent at the car races where she would serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner to the teams, the guys driving the race cars and the mechanics and the photographers. So one day she had a poster in the cafeteria where she worked that had her book We Don't Die for sale. So I said, well, I didn't know her yet, so I just bought the book, because I was always curious about afterlife subjects. And I bought the book and read it twice before I actually went up to her and said, hey, I do all this video production and editing, and I'm really interested in your book and the subject matter. So would you like to do some work together? And she said, okay. And we did a little short thing, a little documentary about her book. But years later, she did a big conference in Orlando in 2019 that Phil and Kerry were at, doing their presentations, their demonstrations and teachings. So I didn't know them at the time. And Sandra said, you would really benefit from actually going to a class rather than filming it. At this point, it was early in the weekend. So I think it was about a 5-day event. So that Thursday morning, my wife Maggie and I went to Phil and Kerry's mediumship class, and I didn't know anything about it yet. I mean, Sandra had told me a few things about what she had experienced, but I didn't know what evidential mediumship really was. I knew what psychics were, and I knew what mediums were, but I didn't know really what they had to offer. So we took the class that morning, and we got the orientation part done, and then we're now all of a sudden I'm sitting with a stranger that I've never met before, and I'm asked to be, clear my thoughts and do a reading for the stranger, after, short, and I took what they said, and I cleared my thoughts, and first thing that came into my mind, I expressed to the stranger sitting across from me. And, the first thing I can remember it so clearly, I said, because I pictured Italian scene in my head, like in Venice. So I said, does Venice or does Italy mean anything to you? And she said, yeah. And then we started, going back and forth. And before you knew it, I had a connection. And it was more than, I could tell it was more than just, it was undeniable because I could feel this like presence within me, and it was the woman I was talking to. It was her daughter, and I could see her in my mind, and I could feel her, and we were crying, and this was my first experience with it. So after having that experience of doing the reading and watching them do their demonstrations in the evening, I said, yeah, I want to make some movies about these guys, make some content, and here it is. Here we are. It's a few years later. I mean, this movie took about 3 years to make, where we really focused on making the movie because we met in 2019 and we did some filming back then, which you'll see and you saw some of it in the film. But we really started, producing the film about, I guess, 3 years ago. And so that's how I met them and how I got interested in the subject matter.
Okay, that is so interesting. I had no idea. And that's really powerful too. And just listening to you, I go, wow, the spirit world, there's some orchestrating they were doing behind the scenes for sure. Now, Phil and Carrie, before cameras ever came into your life, what did your journey look like with the evidential mediumship, right? How did you know that this was your particular path and you were really meant to be doing this as your life's work, as opposed to some people who maybe just serve through attending practice circles or maybe just giving some messages to family and friends? You do this on a large scale internationally.
Mhm. There is what the spirit world would like and what we as individuals would like, and sometimes they're the same and sometimes they change direction. I was involved with spiritual matters and spiritualist churches way back at the end of the 1990s and volunteered and was part of that community for the best part of 15 years whilst working full time and being a mum to a young daughter. And I thought that's how it would continue. I thought I would always do private readings and the demonstrations of mediumship and Sunday services as a side thing to my day job. And then it became apparent that although I was really good at my day job, it wasn't feeding my soul, it wasn't nourishing me, it wasn't making me feel like I was living on purpose. And so in 2014, I said to the CEO, I think I'm going to step away from this in 18 months. And of course, he said, What? I thought you were after my job. I said, I was, but we just know when our life is not being how it should be. And so I'd spent 18 months doing an exit plan, left there in 2016. The work began to build up and build up in terms of the frequency I was being asked to take part in. And that's when I met Phil. We were both teaching on one of the courses. The course organizer was bringing tutors in. Excuse me, you took my breath away.
Thank you very
Um, and it was through discussions, and this course took place probably every year. And so 2016, 2017, we took part in this course. And then in 2017, we were always having discussions about, oh, mediumship. Oh my goodness, what difference are we going to be able to make? And then my circumstances hadn't changed. I'd been single a long time, but your circumstances had changed. And we became partners in life, in business. The pandemic hit, so we were locked in the same property very shortly after being married. And I wouldn't do it any other way. It just feels completely normal. But if somebody had asked me back at the end of the 90s that I'd be here speaking to you about a documentary film, I probably just would have ignored you and walked on.
I think for me, it's been very similar. You sort of become aware of the spirit world. I was aware since the early childhood, and you progress and it really becomes dominant. And I began investigating it, looking into my local spiritualist church, and I met some influential people there, and they helped me and encouraged me. And like everybody, you have that dream, you want to be the best that you can, but being in service means that you don't have whatever a normal life is because you have to drop things to serve the churches and private readings, and you sort of see your life as helping people. And when we came over to America through Sandra Champlain, and Robert said to us that very week, "Oh, I'd like to make a film about you guys," I took it with a pinch of salt. It was a case of, yeah, whatever, and pushed it away. Didn't know that he really had the intent to do it. And we spoke about it. And to be honest, in the beginning, when it was going to happen, we said, it's not really for us because it can't be. We're not that kind of people. We're not that showy kind of people. And so we sort of agreed we'd do it as long as it kept the integrity. So it was a real big culture shock every step of the way, knowing there's a camera in front of you, doing the work that's so privileged to be able to do and to help people. Then the reality of this film really hit that it was going to touch a lot of people's lives, because the more that we traveled, we got to meet more people that would not step in a church or look or hear about spiritualism. They thought it was, in fact, I'll quote a few people where they said it's a little bit woo-woo. What is that exactly? Or you really do what? And so when we meet people like this, and when the film really hit with us, we thought we're going to touch people's lives in a bigger way. So then it took a different journey. It became very, very real. But we've never lost that integrity and that honesty about why we do mediumship. And that's to inspire the living, to educate people, to help people progress. And we're very fortunate now with the film and other things that we're in a place where we can help people. And that's something we both cherish. And from day one to this day and forevermore, we cherish what we do. So it's been very important.
I think the film represents very closely the standards that we hold in our own teachings and our demonstrating and our own philosophy of life after death. It's a lot to have something, it's a big thing to have something that is integral to our lives put on film, because often when something so personal is put onto film, it loses something. But Robert had assured us that this was a powerful enough matter that had to be shared, and that he would be able to do it in a way unquestionable now. I don't know why we asked them to explain to us, but he was sure that he could demonstrate it in film just how we feel about it. And it's happened, it's there.
It's very evident in the film, the genuineness and the integrity that you have towards serving the world of spirit and the people that are guided your ways, even to in the film where there's some clips of you giving a sitting, a private sitting, the connection, the genuineness, and the healing. And this is something that I really want to delve into because there is so many different versions of what mediumship looks like today, especially in the online space. There's a lot of people who I call like pop-up mediums. They have an experience and then they want to share it with the world. And I get it. I understand there's that that little something, that spark that goes, oh my goodness, there's something more than this physical life. And I want to share this with everybody. But how that gets shared isn't necessarily perhaps accurate or in the highest good or representing the spirit world from the most, I want to say, genuine and accurate way possible that really serves the needs of the two worlds. So when you're thinking about, and this is to all of you, when you think about evidence of the afterlife, what would you say is like the deeper purpose behind the film, simply beyond documenting mediumship? Because there's a big message here, and perhaps maybe more than one. Robert, let's start with you.
This was so coming from as a teenager being an atheist and not believing in life after death and believing that when I die is that's it. You're blacked out, and that's a very scary way to live life. And I have friends who are atheists. I was, and all the way up until recently, So, and as an adult, being enlightened, maybe you would say, to all this undeniable proof and evidence that for me personally, I mean, someone can watch the movie and say, "Hey, all those guys are in cahoots," but I I know for me, this has really changed my life, and it's given me something to believe in. I believe in the spirit world and life after death wholeheartedly after going through this journey. So this is not only is this a film for the audience, for you guys to learn from and benefit from the information and the proof, but I mean, for me, it's changed my life, incredibly. And I guess, I want to help other people that maybe go through life feeling like, you know, that there is nothing on the other side and it's depressing and it's scary. Like maybe I can help a few people, understand that this isn't the end. Like, dying is not, it's not all doom and gloom. And, that's how I really hope that it helps people in that manner, because that's what it did for me. And, we all have our own personal experiences. So there's obviously going to be people that are going to watch it and say, yeah, I still don't believe. I'm still skeptical because I have good friends who I tell my stories to of my own evidence that I've experienced, and they're like, yeah, whatever, That, uh, one thing someone said to me, very close to me, said, "I believe that that you believe." It's like, so how do I convince them, But I hope that
Yeah.
the movie, helps people and brings comfort, and that's really, that's my goal with it. It I wanted to do because I was passionate about it, and once I started to experience these moments with Phil and Carrie, it's just I wanted to share that with everybody, and that's what the movie is. I mean, it's there's no fast editing and flash cuts and music that's crazy, and it's not sensationalized. It's very journalistic approach and simple, and it just tells their story. And I like how it not only tells the story of you know evidential mediumship, but it's about them too as the couple, and it's about their life and their love for each other, and it's like it's kind of two things going on at the same time. It's evidential mediumship and it's also their story. Um, that's what I love about it. So yeah,
I think that's what makes it really powerful. It's not just mediums on the platform giving messages. We're getting a behind the scenes look at the people that are doing this work, and it shifts the view and the narrative of what mediums are like or who they are. And again, like a lot of television and even social media, because that's where everybody finds everybody these days, is there's a lot of sensationalism, and it takes away from the genuineness and the authenticity of what this work was intended to be about, and how many people are still doing and working and serving the spirit in that way. And it was really cool to watch the movie and go, wow, I get to know these people a little bit more. Wow, they have the same struggles or similar life experiences. They experience grief too. And it brings this very cohesive view of what a medium looks like and how that impact of the work they do with the spirit world not only touches them and supports them, but also can present to other people too that this is a natural faculty, and it beyond just the evidence of life after death, it does inspire the living, and it can provide an incredible immense healing, because through those communications and those lived experiences it can shift your perspective, pardon me, and that is completely transformative in so many people's lives. And I was just like, my husband sat down and watched it with me, and he claims to be an atheist. So we shall see how that goes.
Yeah.
I love how you shared that, Robert, because I thought, oh, wow, my husband, Spirit's going to have your number one day, my dear. Phil
That's
and
true.
Carrie. Yeah.
What Robert has done with this film is called reality. You mentioned there sensationalism that we see today all over social media and everywhere. And for me personally, it's cringeworthy when we see somebody say, wow, wonderful lady, how good was the spirit? And it takes it away from what's actually happening, which is a truth, a touching of a soul that's been inspired. And in the film, Robert's caught that perfectly. And that's what we stand for. We stand for that truth. We stand for that soul being touched. And you can push sensationalism away because that's not who we are and we don't want part of that. Yes, there's an acknowledgement. Yes, we're in a film. But what Robert catches is a truth and why we are very passionate about doing it. For those few moments, we are their loved ones. We're feeling what they feel. We're speaking what they want to speak. We're telling the story of their life in their words. And for me, there is nothing more powerful, and that does not need sensationalizing at all. And I think from previous things we've been in and previous things we've seen, Robert has caught the story, not just of mediumship, but actually ourselves, as you've said there, we are who we are, and that's that. And somebody mentioned our love story. Yeah, we have a sense of humor as well. This is what we're like. But this is reality. This is what we do. This is every day of our life. This is what we live, what we breathe, and what we share. And we could only hope that Robert caught something that showed our truth. And we're lucky all the way through the film. He has caught it from the moment it starts to the end scenes, which were very, very personal, very emotional. As you, before we started, Courtney said that you got emotional with it because we're sharing our story. Our hearts are on our sleeves. Our lives are open. This is just what we do, and we love it.
I think when Robert had said that he wanted to capture evidence being given that was unedited, and he wanted moments where you could track the camera backwards and forwards between the sitter, the recipient, and either Phil or myself. The reason for that is there's so much attention given to mediums, rightly so, because their mediumship is good. But the clips are edited. There's maybe 10 minutes summarized down into 30 seconds, and then afterwards the person is interviewed. Robert had said, wouldn't it be good if I could film both of you individually and to capture a private reading or a demonstration where in the moment there is an answer, there's a statement and then a confirmation or validation. And I think this film has provided that without question. When we were looking at the reason for this is that there's so many people in the world today that are struggling. They're asking the larger questions. They're going through horrendous experiences and horrendous grief. And then to have a seed planted that leads them to ask their own questions, pick up a book or go online or have a look at something else. And each experience adds on. And so they begin to explore their own spirituality. And that's what we are about. The aspect of the individual isn't separate from the aspect of the person that can communicate with the spirit world. They go together. And this film, I think, puts it forward perfectly just how much healing can come from a private reading or a demonstration.
I think what Kerry's said there and what Robert's highlighted, planting of seeds. Yes, we could have come out with this film with lots of evidence, mind-blowing evidence, because there was some of that. But actually, we wanted realism. We wanted what you should expect when you go for a reading, what you should see at a demonstration, what you should understand takes place. So I think Robert, in the stories, has planted so many seeds for people to question and make their own mind up. And I think that what he's done is so balanced, it doesn't sway one way and doesn't sway the other way. It's so critically balanced that when I watched it, I sat there and I had to watch it again and then watch it again and again. And even now when we watch it, we still miss bits because we think, oh, I never saw that bit before. But he's not changed it.
The power of it, Robert will remember this. We were in New Mexico and he hadn't put the full colour into it yet. He hadn't got the sound. I think we'd just come back from the scene where the bridge is over the Rio Grande.
Oh, Taos, yes.
In Taos. And he showed he put some sequences together, and I remember just crying.
I remember
Said,
that day.
how on earth have you taken us just walking across the bridge, nervous, thinking, what on earth are we doing here? But our heart was in the right place. And then a few words, and it just captured it. I remember that moment thinking, yeah, this is going to be okay. I don't need to worry about this anymore. We're in good hands.
Were you nervous because of being on camera or because you're on that
Yes.
extremely high bridge?
No,
Oh,
because
both.
because you can say both, but for me it was because I was on camera.
Yeah.
That bridge was called the first kiss, wasn't it, Robert? But as soon as we walked up to it, we went, this is the last kiss, and we had no idea where we were because it's renowned, that bridge. Yeah, so it's
Yeah. There's a lot of fun stories that went into the making of this because we traveled all over the world. I mean, I went to Australia with them for 10 days, maybe more. I was in Blackpool where they live for a while, and in Canada, and in different places in the US, New Mexico. So there's a lot of
Scotland.
Scotland. Carrie, make sure I got the accent right on Scotland. But yeah, we had so much fun because, in between filming, we go to lunch and have dinners and then do little adventures. Like Phil and I went to Liverpool where the Beatles started their career and went to
Nice.
the Cavern Club where they played 300 shows and we're just hanging out, not working. And those kind of moments in between the moments were also very fulfilling. We had a really good time off camera, producing this. And yeah, it's been an incredible journey. I really loved Australia. That was fun.
it was.
And you as the producer are getting to see and get to know and connect with the people behind the
Absolutely.
title, the evidential medium. How is that for you when you're going back to 2019, you're at that class, you give that first reading, and that opens the door or plants the seed. And for your own journey of transformation and connecting with these people who are known internationally and highly respected, what does that do for you as the person? Robert, what does that do for you as the filmmaker?
Well, personally, I've made so many new friends in this process. That person that I gave my first reading to, we are still great friends today. All the way, we became friends on that weekend and we are still friends. And she's helped me a lot along the way with different projects, Lisa Lanuski. And, each one of these trips has gifted me a new friendship with somebody that I didn't know before. One story that I like to remember and tell is, all the students would go out to dinner after a day's work, and we were in Troy, Ohio, and one woman named Elaine and I were kind of we were kind of lagging behind the group as we were walking back from the restaurant. We had about a half a mile walk back from the restaurant to the hotel, and we lagged behind. And she told me, she was talking to me, and we were talking, stories, and she was telling me about her daughter who had passed, and it gave her this one-on-one conversation with me to open up and just talk about it. It's kind of like therapy, and I listened, and I think that was good for her. It was good for me. And the best part about it was, the group kind of left us in the dust, but I pulled out Google Maps and I found a shortcut through the back of a Walmart parking lot, and we got to the hotel 5 minutes before they did. And she loved that. Like we beat them. We were slow, but we still beat them.
I love
That is
that.
so Elaine. That is so
Yeah,
Elaine. Yes.
yeah. But
To,
there's a bunch of those kinds of moments that I really adore.
it's so powerful. And these are things that are going to last and stay connected to you even outside of this really impactful film that you've created.
Mhm.
Phil and Carrie, you speak a lot, like so much about evidential mediumship. In your own words, what makes mediumship truly evidential, and why is that integrity so important to protect?
I think there is a misconception as to what evidential mediumship is. If we take it back to basics, and it's easier understood, there are caveats to it, but at the very basic level, anything that is about the person that's physically still here could be, in the majority of times, psychic. And it's not the poor relation. It's not second best. It has a purpose. And anything about the person in the spirit world we call mediumship. So we can differentiate where the information and evidence is coming from. But people, rightly so, are looking for some connection, some reassurance that their loved ones are there, some validation that they're not alone. And so if somebody were to find out that the information didn't come from the spirit world, that it actually came through somebody getting the information from them, I don't know about anybody else, but I'd feel a little bit tricked. I'd feel a little bit, I'd be questioning the whole validity of the process. So in order to get the message, which is traditionally what it's called, it's that little bit that is what the spirit world wants to reassure our person here with. They have to prove they're there, and the only way they can prove it is how they were, what they did. Yes, there'll be names, yes, there'll be memories. That's the only way that the recipient or the sitter can trust that the medium's getting what they're getting. Otherwise, you end up with a blend. So evidential mediumship is about reassuring the sitter that the loved one is there physically. They're gone. The death is, and the grief, as all of us know, is horrendous. But emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, they're still present, and that brings so much hope. So for me, evidential mediumship is planting that seed so that they can unfold their own journey, but them knowing that that unfolding of the journey started with genuine evidence from the spirit loved one, their person in the spirit world. And that can only be done from information about them, not information about the person here.
Let's put this into context. Let's pretend each of us is in the spirit world and you have one chance to prove that you're still living. That's what evidential mediumship is. You're telling the story of someone's life, their words, in the way that they want to share it, with the meaning, the emotion, with the understanding, with logic and rational thought. When you do that, it hits home. That's why evidential mediumship is so important. I remember a sitting from a few years ago, just as we were making the film, where a gentleman and his wife came to me and they'd lost a child. And before I started, they said, we've been told that for every month our daughter has been in the spirit world, they've lived a year for every month or a decade for every month, one of the two. And I stopped the reading. I said, I got to talk to you. I've got to tell you the truth here. And we did. And afterwards, they were so amazed with the truth, with the contact, not with me, but their daughter. That's the truth of evidential mediumship, that we simply forget it's somebody's daughter or son or brother or sister or mother or father or friend or partner. It's them speaking what they want to give. And let's be honest about it. They're intelligent. They know what to say. The medium doesn't. The medium surrenders to the story. And it's through following that communicator, that loved one's story, that that person in front of you gets that one chance to hear from their loved one. And what I found out very early about evidential mediumship, if I give it in the way that the loved one means it to be given, in their words, it hits home far more profoundly than me trying to make it sound good. And that's the one thing I learned very quickly. In fact, it was instilled into me by Glyn Edwards and Paul Jacobs, both of them. Both of them cut from the same cloth almost, Mr. Gordon Higginson. So when you start to understand that evidence carries so much weight, and the evidence is relating to the message that has been spoke. So, for example, if Dad is speaking about his job and giving credible evidence, then the message is about the job to the person in front of you. Otherwise, why else would Dad give evidence about his job unless it was important for what that son was going through in his life? Same with the young girl and the parents. Those final moments. And for me, we can give what we think is good evidence, and we can all think of it, names, addresses, all those things. But in that moment, when you give that credible evidence that they were there in the final moments, sharing the last breath together, the last kiss, holding hands for the last time where there was a response. For me, there is nothing greater, more important. I still remember 30 odd years ago, my first contact I was ever given. That's how profound evidential mediumship can be. And I can still remember the medium. And he had an unfortunate ending, but died young, but still remember it word for word.
I think when we think about evidential mediumship, part of the film was to raise the bar of evidential mediumship. And part of it was about educating the people as to what to expect when they go. Phil had an experience very early on as to what it could do, and it still sits with you. Why shouldn't everybody have that experience? Why can't every single one of us expect? Not because we need to seek out the best medium and pay the highest amount of money for it, but it should be a given that if we get an evidential mediumship reading, that we know what to expect. So for us, the film was, yes, sharing where people can increase and advance their mediumship too, but also for the larger percentage of the population as to what to expect. And I think that's a right that every single person has to know when they're getting a good reading and when they're not, and it doesn't rely on the price tag.
And I think that's what Robert's caught in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Well said. So beautifully addressed. And I love, Phil, how you mention when there's an evidential contact, it's not so much the specifics. I mean, that's important, but you're talking to somebody's departed loved one. These are still people in non-physical form, and that just really brings in, I want to say, that genuineness of what this is about. We're not talking about so-called dead people. We're not just bringing through a message. We're actually having a communication with them, and that they still want to talk. And this just really solidifies. And I mean, I love evidential mediumship. It is my love for my own healing and to see the healing that has been received from other people through that contact. But for evidential mediumship, I think it's so important. It's beyond just a medium giving some facts. It really is like that, I guess, telephone line, if you will, where people can still have that communication. And it brings such a huge transformation to not only the recipient, but then maybe they share that with somebody else, how it's changed their life. And it can be, like you've mentioned in our conversation today, seeds that are planted. It's really, really powerful. Now, in this film, both of you, Kerry and Phil, experience a grief of losing your parents. And somehow you still manage to be able to sit for others and deliver evidential messages. How did you hold your own grief while you're being that conduit for the presence of the spirit for somebody else's healing?
Incredibly difficulty, or should I say with incredible difficulty. People think about grief as the loss. Well, the loss starts way before the loss. It's the journey. I mean, probably Robert doesn't know some of this information we'll probably share here today, that we are like everybody else. We want to be with our families. We want to be with our loved ones. And as they go to hospital way before, you want to be there. You feel it's your duty. You want to be there, help them, support them, and hold them and let them know they're loved. So once you start to realize it's been a long, long journey, and if I'm honest, as a husband and of somebody I very, very much love, trying to don't you make me cry. Trying to hold them, trying to support them, and trying to make the right decisions for them as well. It's really tough. We're not just losing somebody and somebody's become frail, but we're supporting each other as we go through it, and to, as you say, do the readings and demonstrations. To give you context, we've literally been talking, and because we've got multiple screens, things pop up that somebody's passed, and it hits you. We're real people. You can't bypass grief. You can't bypass shock. You're human. We feel it, and we have to dig deep and put everything to one side in that moment, because when we stand up to serve the spirit or sit down for a private reading, we are theirs. We're talking on behalf of somebody, and somebody else is going through that grief, and we want to inspire them. We want to bring them healing, and make changes within their life, or they can make changes in it because they feel uplifted. So I've got to be honest, it's a real struggle. There's a lot of emotion. Even now, talking about it, it brings back so many things that touched us in that moment. And I know Kerry is my wife, as I've said, but for me, what she actually went through it in the making of this film was incredible. To lose her mum the next day, do a demonstration, and the day after fly to Miami, and she made me swear not to tell anybody what had gone on and what had happened, and to hold it together. And you see those scenes, and when I watch the film back and I watch this, and I think you would never know that that had literally just happened. So we are trained from a very early period that when we serve the spirit, we put our life to one side. Everything's on the doorstep until we finish, then we pick it up again, and we have our moments. And there was times where you flew across the Atlantic and in tears, and remember saying to the air hostesses, she's just lost somebody. And these are the memories. And I watched the film, I forget about it, but now you've asked the question, it's like the floodgates are opening to all. So it's incredibly difficult.
The run up to it, and I think Phil has said something very eloquently. Thank you. It is difficult, and every single person that's watching this will know on the death of somebody, if it's been sudden and unexpected, it has its trauma. If it's been an illness and it's been a long time, it has its trauma. The preemptive grief Robert talked about in Ohio, on the night that we did the demonstration, where we were in our blue suits, I think it was the film at Troy. My mum had just fallen and was rushed into hospital, and that was the start probably of the next year and a half. But it's only when I watch it, immediately I'm thinking, wow, how did I how did I do this, having just received the call and then carrying on? There's so many points all through that film. Both Phil and I remember where we were based on his own dad, who sadly died at the beginning of this year. I never got to see the film, even though he was very proud of you.
He wanted to see it, and that's the unfortunate thing.
And all the way through the film, we remember, oh, we just rushed from that, or we'd just gone to that, or we had not been there, or remember that your stepmom phoned you about your dad. So the film is very powerful for others from what we've heard, but it's equally powerful for us. It's incredibly cathartic to see. It doesn't feel like we have sacrificed anything. It's not at all. It's more of a cathartic feeling of, look what we created together. Look what resilience we built, and look how much Phil's dad is in the film. My mum is in the film. Not for the reasons that we'd hoped, but every time we watch it, everybody gets to see our parents, which is lovely.
Now, that is a very powerful statement, that not only is it the evidence that survives bodily death, right? They bring through that evidence and we get that validation. But what a gift to you as well, because you've given so much. But there's that stamp in that movie as well, that remembrance that, yeah, that was a difficult time, but they're still a part of it, whether they got to see it on the screen or not. It's, oh, touches me. Again, I was crying at the end of the film because there was so much realness to this incredible film. Robert, and I'm going to start with you and then Phil and Kerry. For someone who's listening or curious or even skeptical about mediumship, and let's face it, there's a lot of reasons why people should be. They've been given lots of reasons, right? What do you most hope that they're going to take away from this film and from evidential mediumship really as a whole?
Well, take it from somebody who was an atheist that didn't believe in life after death to somebody who has now had my own personal contacts with someone on the other side. And it was, I would say it was, it wasn't voluntary, but maybe there was something at work here that made it happen. But to put it into perspective, on a lot of these shoots that we were doing, I would sit in the class where the students would pair off into groups to practice mediumship on each other. And I would be sitting behind a tripod. I'd have them microphoned up and I would record their entire reading. And I'd be sitting back there. And we did it for many days and many hours. So sometimes I would kind of just go into a daydream, and then all of a sudden I'm seeing a spirited guy, and he's like on a fishing boat, and he's holding a beer, and he's with his buddies, and they're holding up a fish, and the ladies that are having their readings on each other, the other lady's going nope, 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 and I felt like, hey, it would be unprofessional for me to speak up in the middle of all this, so I'm just gonna stay quiet. And at the end of the day, I went up to one of the ladies, and I was really reluctant to do it, but I said, "Was your dad a fisherman?" She's like, "Yeah." "Did he have a beard?" "Yes." I could see him. He's holding up the fish. He's with his buddies. They got their cans of Miller Lite, and she's like, "That's him. That's him." So it was like when I let myself go into that daydream behind the camera, I was getting the message, which I found to be, amazing. And it didn't just happen one time. It happened several times. Um, And then I would say the highlight of this whole movie for me personally was we had we did a shoot in Miami where I live in Miami. I had them come and we did a big 3 camera demonstration shoot, but we also had courses during the day. And one of the ladies that was in the course couldn't make it because she was ill the second day. So it left an odd number of participants to break out into groups. So like, okay, well, we'll put 3 people here and 2 people here. And something inside me just said, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. I'll put the camera down for this 15 minutes and I'll be somebody's partner. I didn't know who it was gonna be, but I partnered up with this woman and didn't know her. or anything about her, and it was a mind-blowing experience because I let I let Phil and Carrie's teachings, take over and put my analytical mind to the back burner and just let whatever information I was getting, just let it out, let it go. And I was asking her about her grandfather's house and the kind of car that he drove and what the yard looked like. And she's just saying yes to everything. And I was being inside the house and I was seeing the dining room table and the magnets on the refrigerator. So I was getting this really vivid, almost like a daydream about this individual's life. And to make a long story short, because this went on for 15 minutes, she said, yes to everything. I'm like, but I'm not a medium. Like, this is crazy, right? Um, and how they always say the message is what's important because all that evidence is great and all, but there's like a message. And then I noticed that because I'm seeing the grandfather and the granddaughter having snowball fights in New York City, and I'm feeling freezing cold, and I can barely talk, and and at the end, in my mind and my peripheral vision, I see the wife of the grandfather, and that was the message, like they're together, and everything's okay, and they're with you, like because she came up at the end. So I said to the woman, I said, your grandmother must have died early, must have passed on early because she's not in any of these memories that he's showing me. And she's like, yeah. And I was like, well, she's here now with him. And that for me was the cream of the crop. So I don't know how to make anybody else believe in it, more than what I could say there. But for me, it was so profound, impactful, life changing. So if you're a skeptic, hey, maybe try it. Have an open mind.
Yeah.
I know it's easier said than done, but this was because I never wanted to be a medium or anything, and I don't necessarily want to be a practicing medium. I want to be a documentarian and do my journalism. But this kind of it just came about organically, and I really appreciate it, and I love those moments, and I'll never forget them because I remember every moment of that reading as if it happened yesterday, and it's been a year and a half since that happened. I remember the scenes in my mind still, like very detailed. So, for me, it was an unbelievable experience, and I treasure it, and I'm so happy that it happened to me, and I would like to tell people my story and say, hey, this is real, and you know, look into it. I'm
It
sure a
was
lot of
such a
your
contrast.
yeah, I'm sure a lot of your listeners already know, but take it from someone who went from just a
Yeah.
short time ago to believing in nothing to being all in.
So let me ask you this before Phil and Carrie respond to that question. Do you consider yourself a medium?
Um, well, I don't know because I don't practice, and I know we
Yep.
need to practice if we're going to do that. And I do have these fantasies of practicing and getting on the courses and everything. So it might be in my future. Um, I don't want to, give myself that title. I think that everybody is a medium. I think it's a sense that we all have. We have our six senses, and this is another sense, and people can choose to ignore it or cultivate it. I think all humans probably have this ability to be able to connect if you're open to it. Um,
Yeah.
so it's a matter of wanting to do that because some people are like, no, I don't want to have anything to do with this. A lot of people are like that. People are scared, but
Mhm.
it's nothing to be afraid of. So,
Exactly. Exactly. Phil and Carrie.
I think, well, in fact, I know that Robert's summed it up eloquently, perfectly, and is also a living proof why we do what we do. And for anyone that's listening here, then listen to Robert's story because he will talk about it, and he still is talking about it.
Even though he doesn't like being on camera.
And he doesn't like talking. and he won't accept the title. But I've listened to some of the evidence he's given, and it was incredible. And to see it unfolding as a tutor, you're just so proud. But going to people that you want us to say something that might open their minds or anything, then I'm going to be straightforward and quite honest. Be skeptical. Be as skeptical as you want.
Oh, that's a line from the film.
It is a line from the film. You stole my thunder there. But actually, it's a good way to be because you're searching for your truth. As a medium, I'm still skeptical. I'm still questioning. I'm challenging the spirit world all the time because I know what is possible, but I want more. And I know there's more possible. So having an open mind is what Robert said. And that is the critical point. Have an open mind. Be open. You never know what might get said by a medium. And I'll guarantee you one thing. What you think you want to hear won't be the one thing that changes your mind to mediumship, the truth of the spirit world being real. It's the evidence you're not expecting, the stuff that's not on social media, that's not in your mind frame, the things that you've forgotten about that are brought back. And then you think there is no chance anyone would know that. How did they know that? Because it wasn't even in my mind. And that's the evidence that grips you. And that's why there are so many believers out there today because of those moments. And this film, the way that Robert has caught everything, does that for people. To hear people on that film that receive readings who believe, but still turn around and say, you know, this is incredible. I've never had this detail before. It shows there's always more to be got. So be open-minded, be skeptical, question, challenge, but be curious about it. Start to do your homework and research and think about it in another way. What would you say if you have the chance to come back? What would be your evidence? That usually stumps people what they would say. And over the years, there's been code words, passwords, unique things said. And even to this very day where I've been working and reading, things were said that I was still interested in. People are so unique. That's what excites me. That's what mediumship's about, inspiring those people and remembering. Because every time a contact is done, it's not just the evidence that is brought forward, it's the trigger that opens other evidence that you've forgotten about as well. It takes us down memory lane. And it really does something for you. It changes the way that you interact in life. So be skeptical, be open-minded, challenge it, search for it, but watch the film and know what a medium should give you.
There's something about the way that Robert's done this film that leaves in my mind no question as to how it could have been done any better. So I guess the answer's in the film. There's also an aspect of every single person that watches it will then be left with, what would it take for me to believe? What sort of evidence could I get? The only person that can value the evidence is the person that receives it. It's very easy to watch from the outside somebody else's reading and have an opinion on what you think the meaningful evidence was and what the waste of time evidence was. And we've heard it called that. If somebody is very skeptical or very analytical and objective in their mind, then they might be the type of person who is going to get the matter of fact, dates, names, places, experiences. But if they're the type that needs that emotional bridge, and it's interesting because there was a song written that's the end song to the subtitles called The Bridge. The bridge is where the mediumship happens. It's when the recipient and the spirit world and the medium are in one moment. And in that moment, everybody is experiencing what's been mentioned. And it's so powerful because in that moment, there's not very many moments that as people who are grieving, I'm one, Phil's one, Robert's one, you're one. And for those of you that are watching, we know that you are grieving in some way as well. The one thing that we would give is to have a new experience with our loved ones in the spirit world, and mediumship provides that. Oh, my mum's thinking about the same thing as me right now. I remember going for that cup of tea or having a laugh at that funny story. And in that moment, there's an emotional, spiritual connection, and that connection will continue because recipient will think about that, person here will think about that. And in that moment, mum's back in. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
This film, I truly, truly believe, is going to change the way people look at mediumship for the better, if not for their own development, for their own inner healing. And mediumship, I was always taught when I began sitting in a development circle years ago, was that it was about healing. And honestly, it took me about 2 years to actually understand what does that even mean? We're supposed to bring through the evidence, the evidence, the evidence. But beyond the evidence, it's that healing that touches the soul at the deepest level. And your life is never your life is never the same. You are forever changed because of an impactful communication. And I love what you have done with Phil and Kerry, Robert, because it is just a beautiful reminder of love continues to exist, but also the real importance behind doing evidential mediumship. So I just want to thank you all so much for being here. And for those of you that are listening, if something in Phil and Kerry or Robert's words touched your heart, let it sit with you for a bit. Evidence of the Afterlife really is more than a film. It's a reminder that love continues, that our connections with our loved ones, they don't end, and that spirit is always working for our healing. And just take a moment today and notice where you can feel their presence in your own life. And with that, thank you everybody for listening, and we'll catch you soon. The Connected Spirit isn't just a podcast, it's a remembering of who we are, a remembering of our connection to spirit, and a remembering that we are never walking this path alone. Mediumship isn't just about speaking with spirits. It's about deepening the connection to our own spirit, to one another, and to the energy that moves through everything. So as you leave this space, ask yourself, what part of this conversation stirred something within you? What connection is spirit inviting you to strengthen? If this episode spoke to you, please share it, leave a review, and connect with me on Instagram at Medium Courtney Dawson, or visit my website at MediumCourtneyDawson.com. Your presence in this community matters, because connection isn't just about what we seek, it's what we are. Until next time, trust your spirit, trust the unseen world, and trust that you are always, always connected.